We're on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, whatever platform that is, we thank you for stopping by 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon. That was good yesterday. I really enjoyed what you did with Stan Bowman. A couple of things that jump out before we get over to Scott Oake, who's on the beautiful retirement train right now on the tour. It's going to be
I think he's regretting it. So
yeah, he is for sure. So we'll have to dig into that and really make him feel uncomfortable. But Stan talking about his goaltending with the Edmonton Oilers this year, the way he put it, they haven't been very good when we've been bad, meaning they haven't stepped up to stop bleeding or save the day. I thought that was a pretty good way to describe what has been a challenging goaltending situation.
Well, it's the Achilles heel of the hockey club. I think most people would think that. Mind you, after watching Connor Ingram Wednesday night in San Jose, he was pretty darn good. But when you trade a guy like Stuart Skinner, and with all the criticism Stuart got, and you bring somebody in thinking that they're going to solve the problem, and the same issues jump up and bite you. That's a problem. I mean, Tristan Jarry is supposed to be better than he is. That's the bottom line. Connor Ingram was not supposed to be part of this equation. He wasn't. But he has become the number one goalie, as Stan said when we talked to him, that, if the playoffs started today, Connor Ingram would be the starting goalie in the playoffs.
Wins a big game against the San Jose Sharks, and Connor McDavid puts his foot down on the gas even more. He might get to 50 with 3 games left.
Well, I had a dinner with somebody the other night, and they said, he might get to 50. I said, he's got 44. There's no chance. There's no chance. And then the hat trick against San Jose, you're going, okay. That's only 1 goal a game now. I might change my mind. And truly, when you think that this is happening without Leon Draisaitl, I think that this is creating, believe it or not, more awareness for who and what Connor McDavid is in this league. Because there would be times that they were both playing, and you'd say, well, McDavid's the best player, and Draisaitl's the best playmaker, and they are a symphony orchestra when they work together. But this is Connor pulling and dragging the rest of his teammates without Draisaitl into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I don't think I have ever seen Connor McDavid play this well on a consistent basis in the 10 years he's been in the NHL.
Well, he can score 50 goals for the second time. You think of all the things he's done. Scoring 50 goals is still a pretty cool thing for him.
Oh, yeah. Well, and if you recall the last time, Daren, he spent a summer saying, I'm passing too much. I've got to shoot more. Yeah. And he did make it a goal to score 50. I think he ended up with 64.
64,
So from that perspective, this is a guy that once he puts his heart into it, then he becomes unstoppable. And right now, he is unstoppable. The 2 goals in the last couple of games, the one in Salt Lake, the one in San Jose, where he drives past the goalie, cuts and drives past the goalie, and the puck's in the net, both are remarkable goals. And it just shows his skill and his speed and how he's able to control everything. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Ned with a little bit of an 80s save selection on the one against San Jose.
But think about this though. How scary would it be to have him come, down the wing on you or down the middle? How intimidating would that be?
And he just did that loop against San Jose. Just did that high loop and around and back in. And But turns on the afterburners, away he goes, and then there's the ability to finish.
Well, and so once that starts, and you almost like, and then all form goes out the window.
Yeah, and then you get stuck. If you're stuck at all the way so fast he's coming, you got to just try something on the fly. So Edmonton now has a 2-point lead on Vegas for first place in the Pacific Division as we size things up going into the weekend. This is a scenario where the playoff races haven't really sorted themselves out at all.
No, I suspect that we'll be talking about it on Monday too. About there's a couple of decisions still to be made. Everybody's trying to stay alive, trying to win games. It's a fascinating month of March and April of what has happened in the National Hockey League, and whether you call it parity, whether you call it mediocrity. It has created tremendous amount of playoff races in both conferences, and it's
attention on the game.
It sets up great playoffs, Daren. It really does. It just sets up great playoffs.
Makes perfect sense that we go over and talk to Oake today, because we'll just step away from the playoff races entirely for some fun with our friend Scott Oake from Hockey Night in Canada.
Well, and like Scott's a dear friend. He has been a great part of Hockey Night in Canada since 1996 or 7, and has done some of the best work and has been a constant on that show for so many years that I think people are going to miss him when he doesn't come back in October.
I like his delivery. I've always liked his delivery. Calm, conversational, never gives the impression that he's in any type of stress or there's any type of chaos going on. I've always appreciated that about Oake.
And one of the great dry senses of humor.
Oh yeah,
one of the great senses of humor.
It's one of the things I appreciate the most about getting to know him was not many people see that side of him, that funny side, and he's got a great laugh.
Oh, yeah, and he's a great self-deprecating guy. He really is. He's tremendous to be around. He's a great teammate.
The host of After Hours and more. We'll get to know Scott Oake a little bit more and reflect on his career that he is going to wind down in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon. Stay with us.
NHL TV is now on DAZN. Hockey lives here.
Here we go.
Watch every game from every team. The best players in the world. And the coldest plays on ice. Watch up to 4 games at once for the ultimate NHL experience. Sign up now at DAZN.
Back at 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon, and here's the legend, the man of the week, the man of the hour, Scott Oake. How's your phone doing? Like, did you have to buy some more storage for all the well wishes?
There were a lot, but just, Daren, since you mentioned the word legend, when people start using the word legend and icon, it really only means one thing, and that is that you've outlasted everybody. And I have, but I'm getting out before they figure out that I'm no good. Yeah, there have been a lot of messages. I want to share with you the best one I got was from Brad Treliving, who said, just because I got fired doesn't mean you had to pack it
in. Good for Brad. Well done.
Listen, and I know you have answered this question a lot, but why are you doing it? You're still good.
Yeah. Well, it's time, John. From the time, by the way, before we go any further, I want to point out that I'm only retiring from something because of John, who had faith in me back in the late 90s, I guess. I've been doing the CFL on CBC, and John was the executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada. And they was that the start of the pregame show or the start of and they wanted to have a segment in it called The Headliner, where they needed a journalist to do it. And there were a number of names, I guess, being considered, but John was adamant that he wanted to have me. And that's how I started on Hockey Night. So I, like a lot of people, owe their careers to John. I'm one of them. As for why now, I can't work forever. And I want to spend more time with my 2 beautiful grandchildren. Plus, the Bruce and Ann Oak Recovery Centers. The Bruce Oak Recovery Center has been open for 5 years now, and the Ann Oak Family Recovery Center is well underway. We're going to start construction on that at the end of next month. those two places take up a lot of my time. It's almost a second full-time job, and now it will sort of become, I guess, the full-time job that I'm stepping into when I'm done with broadcasting.
And when you say that, are you at the center every day? Are you around the men at this point that are finding their lives again?
Yes, but with one qualifier. I have nothing to do with running the Bruce Oake Recovery Center, and nor will I have anything to do with running the Ann Oake Family Recovery Center. I don't know anything about recovery, but I do know how addiction and substance abuse can affect a family. So I love to go to the Bruce Oake Recovery Center on an almost daily basis whenever I can. So Monday to Thursday, travel on Friday, of course. So I'm unable to get there, but 4 or 5 days a week I am there, and I get to hang out with the men, hear their stories, which I always find inspiring, because I am inspired by anybody who will face up to their demons and try to reclaim their lives, which 50 men at the Bruce Oake Recovery Center are doing as we speak, and 50 to 60 women will soon be doing at the Ann Oake Family Recovery Center. So just be there. Just be a presence, and that's basically what I do on a daily basis. But there's a lot of work to do at the foundation level, which requires, fundraising, meetings, etc., and that takes up a lot of time too. I'll have a lot to do. I'm not worried about how to fill my day timer.
On the subject of your day job, what was Hockey Night like when you joined it? Give me some of the people that were there and what the show looked like. I consider one of the great eras of my career was working with Bob and Harry. John will recall when I started on Hockey Night, they were the two guys. And that was before Sportsnet, TSN, and hockey was spread over 3 networks. The show of record was Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada, which, was appointment viewing. And it was a thrill to be part of that. So Bob, Harry, me, and some of the great characters whose names would not resonate with people, but John could remember them. I'm not going to mention any now because I'm sure I'll leave somebody out. But it was a wonderful time and a great learning experience for me to travel with Bob and Harry. I mean, I have stories galore that I cannot repeat publicly, but just great times. Loved it all. At that point in the history of Hockey Night, there was no studio show. We did everything. We did everything on the remote. And of course that was described at that time, and I never mind saying it. That was described as "Where is the circus this week?" Yeah. And the circus included Ron and Don, and usually included Bob and Harry and Scott and our production crew, and we were in every Canadian city. We were in a half a dozen U.S. cities on an irregular basis, and it was to move the band around was fascinating. Scott was a big part of that. The one thing I would say from my perspective when we started that and Scott joined was Scott had the unenviable task of waiting for a phone call from someone in Toronto to say where he's going on Thursday morning.
Yeah, exactly. Or Wednesday night.
Because what we would do in those days, and we were again, Hockey Night finally had a pregame show in the late 90s, and we wanted to do a timely feature on the best hockey story of the week in the NHL. And we wouldn't decide that until like Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And Scott had to be on site for the game on Saturday, which means he was packing his bag and going anywhere in the NHL for Thursday and half of Friday before showing up with the rest of them wherever we were hosting the show from. So he was he was at the beck and call of a few of us, and there'd be a phone call every once in a while pleading, could you give me a little bit of notice? Could you give me some time to understand what we were doing and where we were going so I can plan my life?
Yeah, but that was the job that I took, and I knew what it would be when it started. And, I loved it. I mean, my wife used to joke, but to an extent it was true, that she was a single parent. And then it wasn't just that. You get to the playoffs, and I would do all 4 rounds and sometimes get home for a day or two in the entire 8 or 9 week run. But, you know, a lot of things have happened in my life. You guys know I lost my son and my wife, but, you know, my career was important to me and to my family, and I was all in on it. So not looking back on it with any regrets. I will share with you the one line that I developed as a joke because everything was to Ron and from Ron. And John referred to the circus, and the ringmasters in the circus, I guess, were Don and Ron. And I used to say, if you want to be on Hockey Night in Canada as a host or a reporter, you only have to be able to say 3 things. Thank you, Ron. Back to you, Ron. And Ron, you and Don are so right, my ass hurts. and there was the glory era of Hockey Night in Canada.
Was it intimidating at all around that group, Scott?
No, not at all, because Ron is a genuinely nice man, and so is Don. You know, they were sure they had their things, and you know, the things had to be right just so for them, I guess. But look, they were the stars of the show, and as for, you know, socializing, etc., they were always very welcoming, and I don't have a bad thing to say about either of them. But you're probably right, Daren. And you know, initially I thought, God, how am I going to, you know, be able to hang around with these guys and not embarrass myself? But they're easy.
You've got the football background with the CFL. I did great work in skiing over the course of your career. Are you a hockey guy, or were you a hockey guy?
I always consider myself a hockey guy. I mean, I grew up loving the sport in Sydney, Nova Scotia. You know, Rick Bowness and I are childhood friends. So, yeah, hockey was always the sport for me. I ended up doing the CFL on CBC, and I guess I wasn't very good at that, so they said, go do hockey. But that, and skiing, as you mentioned, was the sport I've done at the Olympics so many times, but that's the one sport I could do play-by-play on, because there's only one person on the course. And still I could screw that up from time to time. You know, it's an interesting story about play-by-play. I always remember at the Olympics in, where the heck was it? It wasn't one of the games I did anyway. And our executive producer was a guy named Bob Moyer. And it was actually Athens. And he called me the night before a basketball game. It wasn't a medal game, but it was the one that was going to determine if Canada got into the medal round. And he said, I'm going to need you tomorrow to go over and do basketball. And I panicked. I said, I've never done a basketball game. I never got a minute's sleep. I was terrified. The analyst on basketball that year was Ron Lancaster, a great CFL player, but he played basketball and he was really good. And so there was no way out. I had to do it. And I got there, and it was Spain against Canada. And 3 of the guys on Spain were named Fernandez. And I said, praise Jesus. I got a 66% chance of getting this right, or a 75% chance, whatever the math would be. And I got through it. But yeah, me and play-by-play wasn't ever a match.
How difficult was that decision? Because, you know, you did have a career that was what I would describe as a typical network sports guy at the CBC. Mm-hmm. You did everything. You know, It was Olympics, it was other games, it was football, it was special assignment stuff that the CBC in those days used to do so well. Or then you're going to be glued to hockey. How much of a decision was that?
Easy. To focus on one thing versus having to be, you know, jack of all trades and master of none. It was easy. I welcomed the opportunity to move full time into hockey. I loved my time working on, I think, the show that was at the center of the variety of sports you're referring to, John, was Sports Weekend, the anthology show that ran for many years on CBC. And on a given week, I could be in Quebec covering the Canadian Speed Skating Championships right down to the Canadian Darts Championships in I don't know, Regina or someplace. That's back in the days when the CBC was almost obligated to cover every national sport final. So there was a variety of sports that I ended up doing, and loved them all. But the opportunity to focus on hockey, which, in this business, certainly in Canada, if you get to work on Hockey Night in Canada, you honestly, you feel like you've made it. And that's how I felt. So it was an opportunity too good to turn down. I never would have thought of turning it down. And here I am now, going out in I don't want to say a blaze of glory, but in a way that I wish had never happened, because it's all too much. But we'll get through next Saturday and move on.
We'll continue the conversation with Scott Oake on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon right after this.
Car shopping should be exciting, not exhausting. That's where Car Gurus comes in. They have advanced search tools, unbiased deal ratings, and price history, so you know a great deal when you see one. It's no wonder that Car Gurus is the #1 rated car shopping app in Canada. When you're car shopping on your phone, it shouldn't be a maze. You need to see all the information. With the Car Gurus app, you can. Powerful search tools that you see deal ratings, price history, and dealer reviews on listings all in one place. And you can turn on real-time price drop alerts so you never miss a great deal. Car Gurus connects you with trusted dealerships when you're ready, ensuring a transparent, hassle-free buying process. Buy your next car today at cargurus.ca. Make sure your deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.ca. cargurus.ca.
All right, Scott, whose idea was After Hours?
After Hours was born out of, and John knows the story probably better than me, but born out of live interviews that John McKeechee, legendary sportscaster on the West Coast, used to do when Hockey Night in Canada's broadcast of the second game concluded. Mm-hmm. On the West Coast, he would sit in and do interviews that were broadcast to the BC region, because there's such an appetite for hockey everywhere, but obviously out there. And the interviews resonated to the extent that I think it was Joel Darling, who was then the exec producer, decided that would be something that should be shown network wide. So it became a Hockey Night in Canada program, and that was the start of After Hours, which Scott Russell did for many years, and then he went to work on Amateur Sport, and I took it over. Kelly, Rudy, and I were, I guess, the co-hosts of it for many years, until Kelly went to work in the studio in Toronto, and left me by myself on the West Coast. No help whatsoever. I'm drowning out here. Could someone send some help? No, it wasn't like that. So I took it over from Scott. I think that could have been as long as 20 years ago. Again, I'm stumbling on the math here, but a long time. And, the show has developed into what it is.
Is there any one interview that you did on that show or any of the other shows that jump out and said, wow, that got me a lot more notice than I think I should have deserved? Well,
aside, it's not After Hours, but you guys will know that the thing that I've done in my career that's got the most recognition, if you want to measure it by YouTube and views, would be my interview with Snoop Dogg in the 2007 Stanley Cup final. So that, and plus my retirement, are the two things I'm best known for on social media. So what's that tell you about my career? But as far as After Hours goes, John, that the format of the show is such that you have a chance to learn something about your guest, and that's the challenge, to get stories out of them that leave people at the end of the program saying, that was neat. I didn't know that about the guy. And I think the show succeeds on that level almost every week. As for guests who are most memorable, we've had a recent, I think, very good run with Seth Jarvis, Devin Cooley, John Cooper. So felt good about the way the show has gone in the last month. But for the one that really stands out for me, that would be, and this might surprise you, is Brian McGrattan. We had him on a couple of years ago in Calgary, and many years back, actually. Brian was then working in player development, sort of a advisor to young players in the Flames organization. And Brian's big in recovery. He was in recovery then. and he spoke eloquently about how he got sober. And the reason that stands out for me, the two occasions in which we had him on, were in the days after, there were many, many phone calls and texts, people saying, I got to get a hold of Brian McGrath, which means that, he inspired people and they wanted to pursue recovery in some cases. And so, given the path that our family has taken because of addiction and substance abuse, I recall those as being very meaningful. But generally, they've all been entertaining, and I think people have learned something about the guest, which is the goal of the show.
Tell you what, the one that stands out for me was, I think it was in Edmonton, but it was Connor Hellebuck. You did a Saturday night with Connor Hellebuck, maybe 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've always viewed Connor Hellebuck as rather aloof. And yet he was engaging. He told you stories about how to play the position and what he went through on a daily basis to be as good as he is. And I walked away, and I think this is probably your goal every time. I walked away thinking, man, that guy's a really good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he has some empathy for other people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his foray into writing children's books is, very commendable. I think that show, to me, helped change, and it did for you, obviously, John. So, the general viewing audience would have come away from that show thinking that's a different guy than I've seen play on the ice, focused on the game, etc. So that's the success and the goal of the show that I've mentioned earlier. But I would go back further and say we had a player on in Vancouver, I think 4 times. And when he started out in Vancouver, he was considered to be kind of the same as Connor Hellebuck, aloof and, different. And that's Roberto Luongo. I think we had him on 4 times. And his appearances on After Hours helped change the public perception of him. And that's what would have happened in that interview with Connor Hellebuck. So, yeah, those are, I guess, zingers, shows that really make the After Hours format worthwhile. And, think of Connor Hellebuck, Roberto Luongo, Kevin BX as another guy. He was never seen as aloof or different, but we had him on 5 or 6 times, and look where he is now. And so, as I like to say to BX, you'd be nothing without me.
Scott Oake, Kingmaker.
Yeah, exactly.
What was your most challenging setup or location on After Hours? Because you've been stuck in hallways, you've been stuck in side rooms, different areas to do the show.
Well, I prefer the hallway, and we've had arguments. Not necessarily arguments, but I guess, healthy discussions about where the setup should be sometimes. And technically it'd be easier to have it in other places, but there's nothing going on behind you. I think my philosophy is I want to look like we're in the rink, and you can see players walking up behind you. You can see the equipment guys moving stuff around, et cetera, to make it look like you're there. If you do the show up against a blank wall, you might as well be in your hotel room or, in the basement. It doesn't, there's nothing for people to relate to. So that would be the goal of it. We've had some difficult setups, but generally we've been able to be, as I would put it, in the heart of the action.
Like equipment guys rolling back past you with gear and all that kind of stuff. Oh
yeah, and can you get out of the way? And most recently, I think this year, Washington played in Edmonton. We were set up outside the Capitals room, and the Caps lost. And then, of course, the stools were too close to the door, which they wouldn't have been at the Caps won. But now we got to start. Now we got to start moving everything, and there's a bit of a ruckus. And then 10 minutes later, when everything had calmed down, everything's fine. So. You have to roll with the punches sometimes. As we continue this discussion, I got to get up and let my dog out before he starts barking here.
Oh,
okay.
Dogs are barking.
What kind of dog? And
there
what's the
name? He's a Labradoodle. The story behind the dog is Darcy bought the dog. I think. He's 7 now, so he bought the dog 7 years ago. Promptly moved to the UK. And he was going to take the dog with him. And, of course, there was vet bills, quarantine, et cetera, and it was all too much trouble. So we gave the dog to Ann and I. And now the dog is mine. For what I spend on that dog, every year, I could send him to Ravenscourt Private School. But anyway,
What's his name?
Humphrey.
Humphrey.
Yeah.
I'm
He's a
surprised Darcy
gorgeous
didn't
dog.
grow-
It's him and me alone in this house. So yeah, I'm happy to have him.
It's amazing to think that Darcy didn't do some sort of magic trick with the dog. So
Well, that was the whole goal when he bought the dog. He was going to spot train him, precision train him, and put him in the act. And I said, well, you better send him away and get someone to do that who knows what they're doing. He said, no, I'm going to do it. And within about a week, I think the dog thought his name began with the F word. Anyway, he ended up with Ann and I, and now with me, and I'm happy to have him.
So I'll just tell two quick stories. The first one is early in Scott's time at Hockey Night. We're doing a game on Long Island. I believe it's Long Island. And, and Scott thinks he's, as he should, he thinks he's a big hockey reporter and he's a journalist. And I tell him, you got to go to Carol Alt. And he said, what am I going to ask her? I said, I don't care. I just want to hear that Carol Alt is dating a hockey player. Yeah. and then the other one was in 1999 in Buffalo, Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. Scott is stationed outside the Buffalo dressing room after the game, and and there's chaos in the control room. There's chaos on the ice. And you get this voice from Scott, John. Yeah, Lindy's really upset. He's kicking garbage cans down the hallway. And then next thing you know, Lindy shows up on the bench yelling at Gary Bettman for the Brett Hull in the crease goal, and we were part of that.
Well, so the Carol Alt story, start with that. That was back in the days when I had just finished in the CFL and CBC, and so that was the first season I was on Hockey Night. The one thing I'd say about my time in the CFL was I regret some of the stuff we did. I mean, we just focused too much on bank statements, and every week it seemed to be no team can afford to lose, and 4 have to every week, and the league's going to fold. And it was a difficult time for the CFL, and because I thought I was a journalist saving the game and the league one story at a time, there was too much focus on that. But I took that sort of I'm a journalist attitude to hockey, and I soon had it beat out of me, thankfully. But now John wants me to go to talk to Carol Alt, and I'm a journalist. I can't do that. This is going to ruin my reputation. One interview, but it was fine, and she was very charming. And then the Buffalo Dallas fiasco. That was what, 3 overtimes? Yeah. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and everybody just wanted to be out of there. And so Brett Hull scores. Dallas has the cup, and the doors open, and the ice is full of people right away. Back then in the late 90s, there was no rule that said the doors didn't open till the cup was presented or whatever, and so it was a fiasco, and there's no going back. And of course, Hockey Night, is happy that it's over. Now let's do the analysis of the game. And Don Lever, who it was, came in and looked at didn't have the capacity or the technological ability back then to look at it on the bench, so he had to come into the room, and he was in there for about a minute and a half, and he came out yelling, "His effing foot was in the crease. His effing foot was in the crease." And so I said, "John, the Sabres say it was in the crease." And then everything changed. And then, it was pivot to cover that. Brian Lewis had to come in and do an interview with Ron to explain what happened. And but because the whole fly in the ointment was it was 1 a.m. and everybody just wanted to be gone. And I just happened to be standing there at the time and was able to because I was waiting to do, I guess, the losing side interview, which would have been the Sabres, and that's why I was wired up by the Buffalo room. Yeah, but I do recall that as a turning point in NHL history, because that never happened again, where the gates opened and there was no going back. They guarded against that from then on. Yeah, no, you're right. That was a strange night, a night that almost felt like it was never going to end. So. Yeah.
Hey, Shanny, why'd you hire Oake?
Well, because he was a journalist. And actually, Scott and I did not know Scott very well. I'll be honest. We were acquaintances when I did football, because I did football myself for another network, but we'd cross paths. And then, believe it or not, I don't know if Scott would remember this. In the late 70s, you came to Toronto from The Rock to do weekend sports for a summer or a period of time. You remember that?
Well, that was so I started.
I was going to say late 70s. Yeah. I was going to say late 70s.
Mid 70s.
Okay.
Because I started, I couldn't even do the math when, that's why I said the other night, 50 plus years. I'm pretty sure I started in 73, and if not 73, definitely 74. So for a brief period, I went to Toronto to work with Brian Williams. That would have been 75. Got there, I think, the summer of 75, and I was then gone to Winnipeg by Christmas of 75. So Toronto was a brief stopover, but that's when it was. Yeah.
But so I remember doing a game, and we used to have regular traditions. After the game, we'd go walk across the hall into the hot stove and have a beer. And our regular group of guys, including Hodge, a guy named Doug Beforth, who ended up running Sportsnet, and a few others, were sitting down, and next thing you know, there's this guy with us. And I think Brian was with us as well, because Brian was part of the entourage every once in a while. And so Scott gets up and goes to the washroom, and Hodge turns to me and says, "Who's that guy?" Because Brian didn't introduce you. You came along and had a beer. So this is the first time we met in the mid 70s. And then from that point on, of course, I was a huge advocate and friend of Don Whitman's. And Don and I did hundreds of games together. And then I would be in Winnipeg, and Scott was doing the Supper Hour Sports, which anybody under 30 doesn't know what that phrase is, Supper Hour Sports, because it doesn't exist anymore. And so that's how we became friends. And then I loved what Scott did on football. I loved what he did at the Olympics. And so when we convinced the network that we needed a pregame show, but I mean, Ron couldn't do everything that we wanted him to. And so we said we need to add another full-time body. And the list was an internal hire at the CBC. And I said, well, there's only one guy on my list. And it took me about 4 months to convince my boss that it should be Scott rather than someone else. And to the point where and by this time I've already talked to Scott. This is what we're doing. How are you interested in doing it? And now he's waiting for the switch to be turned on and waiting for somebody to say, okay, you're now working full time for hockey night. But there's no word all summer long. It's not happening. To the point where I finally went in and said, listen, if we don't have Scott Oake, I don't want to do this job. I'm not interested. He's the right guy for the job. He'll do everything we need him to do. He can be a third host if we have a third game, because we have McLean, we have Russell, now we have Oake, and Dick in Montreal, obviously. So that's how it started. But it took us a long time to convince everybody within the CBC that it should be Scott. And once we did that and got everything going and rolling, it was one of the best decisions we ever made, because we had taken the show from 3 hours to 7 hours that in a couple of years' time, and we needed more people to do it, and Scott was at the top of the list.
So John is to blame for all of this. That's the message there. And I'll share, Daren,
just like being at home. Just like being at home, Scott.
Exactly. One story that I'll share with you that I guess would underline John's faith in me. Bob Cole needed to be on the ice for a stamp presentation for Foster Hewitt, a stamp commemoration statement or a ceremony by Canada Post, which was going to be at then the Air Canada Centre. Leafs and Canadians, Saturday night. And big deal, right? Leafs and Canadians, forever rivals. And so Bob wouldn't be in the booth to start the game. So John, at the morning skate, comes to me and says, hey, Bob's going to be on the ice tonight for that stamp commemoration, so he'll be a minute getting up to press box. So you start the play-by-play. I went, what? This is the Leafs and Canadians on Saturday night. I can't do that. And He said, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So that's all I thought about all day. And I remember going to Harry Neal at the morning skate and saying, Harry, John, guess what John wants me to do? And I told him, and Harry goes, with a F sharp, you're effing kidding. So that didn't do anything to my confidence. So I went to, in the old days of the Air Canada Centre, I'm sure he's long since passed on, but he was a lovely gentleman. Wilf ran the elevator. And I went to Wilf and I said, Wilf, at 7:00, Bob Cole will be getting in this elevator. Do not leave. Do not go upstairs. Do not press up until he gets on the elevator, no matter how long you have to wait. And Wilf was a lovely gentleman. He said, okay. And so anyway, the game starts. I do the starting goaltenders, and I turn around, and there's Bob. And it was like Christopher Columbus spying the West Indies in 1492 for me. Praise Jesus, Bob is here. So I did the starting goaltenders, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, with the play-by-play, here is Bob Cole. I think those are the greatest words I ever spoke in my broadcasting career. Again, a narrow escape.
Well, and you know darn well that the only other person more upset about doing all of that was Bob, and because there was no way he was going to miss doing the play-by-play.
Or a minute of it, and of course his routine, which was he had to be in the booth getting the lines during the warm-up, and then move into the game. And Bob had his things, and that was one of them. But he got through the stand presentation and got up there in time to save my career.
What was the record for most appearances on After Hours? You mentioned Lou was on.
I think Bieksa might be 6. Luongo, I think we had on 4 times. We just had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on Saturday night. That was his 4th appearance. So we've had a lot of players 3-4 times, but I think the record would be Bieksa's. I think he's mentioned it was 6 times. I don't recall all of them. He was miserable to me and not very gracious on most appearances, but no, he was great. He was a great guest. So probably Bieksa. Yeah.
Is it harder to get to know guys now than back then? Harder to get to know guys?
Well, not really, because whereas the guys who are the beat writers or reporters who cover the team on a daily basis might be restricted in some cases to talking to players whose names are on the board. That's what they do now, as you guys know.
Yeah.
Here are the players who are talking today. If we need anybody, though, and certainly if he's an after-hours guest, no problem to have 10 minutes with the guy in the morning, not to give him the questions, but to give him an idea of the discussion and to let him, think if there's a story that can support an answer, because it's all about stories, right? The stories are what people want to hear, and it's far better to have that time with him in the morning, so that on live TV you don't ask him for a story and he goes, well, I can't think of any. That's bad TV, right? So again, not to give him the questions, but to give him an idea of the treatment, topics, etc. So we can always get that time. So it's not difficult for us to get to know a player in that respect. Because we're right centers. Yes. Now he wants in. So here we go.
That's okay.
This dog, I'm telling you.
This is a day in the life of Scott Oake.
No, a day in the life of Humphrey. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. Here, say hello.
There he is. Hey, there's Humphrey. Good for him. And so Saturday night, Ryan Reeves?
Yeah, he's our guest. It won't be all Ryan, though, because I guess there's other stuff there that they want to run. And I refer to them as they because I have lost control of this show. Normally, I know where we're going and what we're doing, but there's stuff that I am not aware of or will not be told about until it actually runs. And I'm sure it's going to be cringeworthy. And as I've said to a number of people, be careful when you're watching this show because it cannot possibly live up to expectations, which has pretty much been the story of my career.
By the way, I knew you lost control of the show when the band came in last week. So
yeah, that band was so Scott Carruthers is our producer out west, and he's a wonderful guy. And I had said to him last week, I was thinking about how we were going to get off the air in Edmonton. I said, get me a drum roll for the announcement, just a little sound effect, and he extrapolated that into getting the marching band in there. I thought the contrast between, and I felt bad for Vic Router because Saturday should have been his day. He did, he retired from TSN, and Vic's a wonderful guy, and you guys would both know him. He did a nice closing in a studio, and paid his respects and thank yous to everybody that helped his career. And it got posted by TSN, and everybody who watched it said, "Classy, classy, very classy," and it was. And what do I get? I get a marching band. Anyway,
I thought you would have been tracking down that guy with a bird. That was
which
flipping
guy's
the
that?
bird. There was a guy flipping the bird the other night in the Vegas game, Vegas Edmonton game on Saturday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
nobody in Canada saw that, Daren. We were too concerned about Scott's career.
Yes. Yeah. What are you bringing that up for, Daren?
I'm sorry. I just journalistically, I was thinking big picture. I apologize,
Daren. I don't know if you know this or not, but this interview is about me. Okay.
Can you tell John about the halfway tree?
Oh, please.
Between Brandon and Winnipeg, the halfway tree. Do you not know about the halfway tree?
No, I don't know about it. You would, because you're from Brandon, right? But,
yeah.
Oh, you see, and now I feel
it's been
better.
a running thing on the show, and John said, "Will Scott know about it?" I said, "Of course, Scott will know about the halfway tree."
Sure. I think I've heard of it, but I would be out of my depth if I started trying to talk about it.
Because I'm very tired of hearing everybody from Brandon and everybody from Manitoba in the NHL, and they all talk about the halfway tree. So,
well, I'm not in the club. Wow, I'm kind of embarrassed the way this interview is ending now.
Take Humphrey for a drive.
By the way, that now you say you're from Sydney, Nova Scotia. So
I'm from wherever it suits me to be at the time.
That's right.
How do you feel? Let's end it there. How do you feel? Like, do you feel content? Do you feel tired? Do you feel like what do you feel?
I feel content. As I said earlier, the prospect of being more present for my grandchildren and Darcy and Leslie, my son and his daughter-in-law, my daughter-in-law, is inviting. I don't feel like I'm sorry or that I've done it too soon. It's just time. Daren, you and I have talked about this, and the travel schedule is the job I love, and I could still do it. And being in the rink on a Saturday night is a real gas. Still love it. Getting there is, I guess, what's toughest now. It's not easy to travel from Winnipeg, and this is, no one feels sorry for me, for God's sake. But I guess I've had enough of going to the airport on Friday and getting home on Sunday, and then on Wednesday. By Wednesday at the latest, the work and pressure of who we're going to get that weekend starts, as who we're going to get as a guest. It's part of the job. I get it, and no sympathy for me, but it's just time for someone else to do it.
Well said. Good to hang out with you, man.
Thank you, Daren, and thank you, John, for everything.
Well, there'll be another time. There'll be more times. Yeah. You never know.
See you guys on the trail for sure.
But Scott's going to launch his own hockey podcast. I know, because he loves them so.
Yeah, you probably heard that the other day. Yeah, I look, it's hockey podcasts in general are the future. If you, I guess the point that I didn't make correctly in that interview that you're talking about, John, was that the feeder system that existed when I was coming up, and Chris Cuthbert, and before that, Steve Armitage, that's gone now. There's no more 2 or 3 sportscasters in every CBC location or CTV or global location. It's a thing of the past. And so anyone who's going to make it in this business now has to do it in whatever way they can. And podcast is an avenue. My point about podcasts is there's so many of them, I don't know which one to listen to. And so you have to be a devoted follower to the particular one that, I guess, turns your crank. If you're an Oiler fan, you listen to the one there. And there's one in every city, and I get it. There's a place for those. Right?
We got it. What we have to do now, though, is we have to get the Jets in the playoffs, and then you can be with your people outside.
I can tell you, if the Jets beat the odds, and they will have to beat the odds to make it, they pretty much have to win out. But if they do, I will start the playoffs in Winnipeg for sure. If not, I'll be somewhere else.
I just want to see you with your people. I want to see you with your people again.
Well, your people it's a nice thought, but as you know, John and Daren, there's never been a gag in TV that we can't beat the daylights out of, and I think that one might have gone far enough.
Well, you've always been gracious to those of us that have crossed paths with you over the years, and never been too big, despite being on the big show, to hang out with us. So we really appreciate it, then, and we really admire your work, man.
Hey, I'm surprised, Daren, anyone wants to hang out with me. That's my starting point. So anyway, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
More with John Shannon on 100% Hockey as we continue.
With the NHL app, you can listen to every NHL game right from your phone. And with home and away broadcast feeds, you choose your way to listen.
And he scores!
Whether you're at work, at the gym, or stuck in traffic, the NHL app puts you right in the action all season long. Every team, every game, everywhere you go. Download the NHL app and never miss a moment.
Do you have a favorite Scott Oake story that we haven't touched on?
The Carol Alt one was that we talked about was, I never forget it, simply because that was a day when because it got a little heated, because once I decided something that I thought was going to help the show, it had to happen. And Scott, was, not necessarily interested in talking to girlfriends. So and it was one of those ones where you said, "Listen, Scott, I don't care. And I'm sure Scott took his microphone, walked away saying, "Why did I take this job at Hockey Night in Canada? This is the stupidest thing I've ever done." For that 25-foot walk between where I was and where he was going to have to talk to Carol Alt. But and really, in many ways, that interview early in that first year was an indication, I think, to people that we were trying to A, to have a bit more fun with the show, and B, trying to go and talk about the game beyond the ice. It was beyond the ice. And that was the first of many things that he did. And I mean, as he talked about, his interview with Snoop Dogg in the 2007 Stanley Cup Final was now stuff of legend.
Well, because of his own rap going in.
Right. No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean,
like it was unbelievable what he did.
Have fun with it. Absolutely have fun with it. And
that was before like fun Snoop Dogg. Like Snoop Dogg was still like given on the music side. He wasn't what he is now. So for him to go out there and deliver that and bring it all together was wonderful TV.
Yeah, it was.
Were you part of that show?
No, I was I was not on Hockey Night. I was running the broadcast department at the NHL by then. So
okay,
I was there. So
were you go mouthing the words along with them? Because you're a big rapper, right? Like you can freestyle a little bit.
But as I told Snoop, I said, "Snoop, do the interview with this guy, will you? Come on, let's get him into this century." So.
When you guys were freestyling before the game?
Yeah, we might have been doing a few things. Yeah, absolutely. Snoop and I. There are times.
Do tell with Snoop Dogg.
There are times that when I was with Snoop Dogg, people had to ask who's John and who's Snoop. So
yeah,
a lot of similarities.
Well, I like when I'm talking to you on the phone. When we do talk on the phone, it's uncanny how you guys sound alike. Like, is this Snoop calling me right now?
You need a new phone.
I can't believe Okie didn't know where the halfway tree was.
See, I feel vindicated. I feel totally vindicated. So
yeah, this is good for you.
Absolutely.
Last weekend of the regular season coming up.
Yep. More games, more excitement, and you watch a few more upsets. Who's going to be out of the playoffs, and they're going to knock somebody out with them. I remember last weekend when the Rangers beat Washington 8-1. How does that happen? Yeah. Washington still has a glimmer, but not very much.
I love being on YouTube with you. I get to know exactly what your thermostat's set at. 72 degrees right behind you.
Well, the last time we had a thermostat on the show, Eddie Olczyk told Nick to turn it down. So.
Turn it down? Yes, you're right. Good memory on that. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you again Monday on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon.